Welcome to another Code Swag video. In this episode, I will show you how to use the Ionic Action Sheet component in Ionic Angular. So we're going to cover the basic usage of the Action Sheet component, and here is a basic example of how the Action Sheet works. So in your application, you can click on an item, a button, or anything, and the Action Sheet is this little drawer that comes up from the bottom and has a bunch of different buttons for different options. So in this example, we have albums, and you can delete an album, share an album, start playing it, or mark it as your favorite, or you can cancel everything altogether. So when you press the button, it performs whatever action you want it to perform. Also, the action sheet appears in this overlay where it sort of darkens everything else and puts the focus on the menu that's drawn up. So this is very common in lots of different mobile applications, and in this video we're going to learn how to implement this in your Ionic Angular application. Let's get started. Okay, so to get started with our action sheet, we're going to be in our terminal, and we want to start a new Ionic Angular application. Okay, so we are creating a new blank application called Action Sheet, and we are going to call the application Angular. When we're prompted if we want to use capacitor, we'll say yes. And if you want to learn how to install your Ionic development environment, please click on the link showing up in your screen or in the description below. We're going to say no to creating an Ionic account, and that's it. Our application has been created. So we're going to clear the screen and head into our application folder. So inside our application folder, let's open our app in our favorite code editor. Mine is Visual Studio Code, and you can open it in Visual Studio Code by typing in code and a period. Okay, so our application is open, and we want to head to source, app, home, and home.page.html. And we also want to open home.page.ts. So those are the two files that we're going to work with. First, in this file, let's get rid of this header. And I'm gonna get rid of this starter stuff right there and just make some minor customizations. Okay, so here, let's create an ion button that is going to activate our action sheet when clicked on. Okay, so that's all the code that we need. We just assigned this click event that's going to activate this method called presentActionSheet when this ion button is clicked. So let's head over to home.page.ts and let's define this presentActionSheet method. So I'm going to copy this name. Okay, so in here in home.page.ts, we want to first import the ActionSheetController from Ionic Angular, and then we are going to create the presentActionSheet method, and then finally we're going to add in the basic structure for creating our action sheet. Let's do that. Okay, so far what we're doing is we have imported the ActionSheetController from Ionic Angular, and we have to declare this in our constructor. So we are creating an instance of the ActionSheetController class, and we're calling it ActionSheetCTRL. So then we create our method presentActionSheet, and we are going to make it asynchronous. And within the method, we are creating a constant that we're calling ActionSheet. This is going to contain the actual instance of our ActionSheet, and we are going to reference this ActionSheet that we have declared up here. And the ActionSheet has a method called create, which allows us to define the parameters of our ActionSheet. So that's where we are now. And now we're going to define what exactly our ActionSheet is about. So we're going to give it a title, we're going to give it some buttons, and we're going to define a lot of different things about it, like whether or not it's animated and all that stuff. Okay, so in the create method of the action sheet, we pass in an object, and at the bare minimum, that object needs a header and some buttons. So these are the minimum number of parameters that we have to supply. So basically here I'm just calling it the CodeSwag action sheet, and our buttons are basically an array of objects. So each object represents a different button. So I'm going to continue for a bit. I just wanted to let you know that this is the minimum requirement, but there are many other options that you can add to your action sheet. Let's add those. Okay, so before we create our buttons, let's just talk a little bit about some of these other options. So we have this CSS class option, and this comes into play when you want to actually add custom styling to your action sheet, which we're going to discuss in a future video. So make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified when that video is out, or you can click in the corner of your screen. When the video is already out, there'll be a link there and you'll be able to access it. So CSS class is for adding custom styling. You just define your class here, and then in home.page.scss over here, you open that file, and then you create your custom styles under this tag. Then we have the animated property. When this is true, that means that when your action sheet pops up, it's going to be animated. Then we have the backdropDismiss, which means that if you tap or click on the background or the backdrop of the action sheet, that's going to close the action sheet. Keyboardclose means that if it is false, that means that when the action sheet opens up on mobile, the user's keyboard it stays up, so it's not closed. If this is true, then that means that the keyboard is automatically going to be closed whenever the action sheet comes up. I've just set it as false here. And then the mode. So the mode is going to be which style is going to be used. Is it going to use iOS style? Is it going to use material design style for Android? Now, this means that regardless of the platform that you're running on, you can actually force it to be iOS even though you're running on Android. All right, so let's save this and let's check out our application in the web browser. So for that, we head back to the command line and run Ionic Serve. Okay, so here's our application. We have our action sheet here, and if you notice, we are running it on an emulated iPhone. So we click the action sheet. Oh, okay, so the action sheet is not working. Let me fix it quickly. I know where the error is. So what we did here is basically we just defined our action sheet, but we never actually called it. We never told our code to at some point launch the action sheet. So we have to do that by saying action sheet dot present. So we have to run the present method of the action sheet. Up here, we are defining the action sheet by creating action sheet and then making it equal to the create method. In the create method, we supply this object that has all these different properties. So this is defining our action sheet, telling Ionic what our action sheet contains. And then finally, we have to tell Ionic to present our action sheet. So if I save this, go back to the browser and click action sheet, then our action sheet shows up. So we have our title, but we have nothing in here because I didn't actually define what the buttons were, because action sheets are all about buttons. So let's get to that. Okay, so right here on buttons, the buttons are, as I said, an array of different objects. I wanted to put it like this so that it's very clear what exactly it is. So now let's go object by object and define our buttons. So our buttons have a text. So this is going to be the title of the button. This is going to be delete. I'm going to try to just follow the examples that were in the documentation. So we have the text property. So this is going to be the title of the button. And then we also have a role. Now, not every button has a role. Only certain buttons do, like for example, close buttons and delete buttons. So this role is destructive. That's simply telling Ionic that this is going to close something, or it's going to it's going to delete something, not close something. And then our button can also have an icon, and here we are going to give it the trash icon because we are deleting. And then finally, we're going to have a handler. So a handler is basically a small function that we're going to run whenever that particular button is clicked. So in this example, we're just going to be pretty simple. We're just going to do a simple console log and log to the console that the delete button has been clicked. All right, so that is our delete button. Let's save that and let's check it out in the browser. And when we launch our action sheet, we have a delete button, and it even has like the styling. It's like red, and we have our icon. And I believe the styling is coming from the fact that we assigned it the destructive role. So let's head back and fill in the other buttons. All right, so I've finished with the buttons. We have our delete button here with the role destructive, the trash icon, and its handler function. We can put any arbitrary code in this handler actually. We have our play button with its handler. We have a share button with an icon and its handler. And finally, we have a cancel button with its icon, and it has the role of cancel. The cancel button is also one of the roles. We have the destructive role, the cancel role, but it's not necessary that a button must have a role, like these ones don't. And we have the handler for the cancel button. So that's it. Let's save the file, head back to the browser. And there you go. We have our delete button, our play button, our share button, and our cancel button. And you'll see that the cancel button also has, it's sort of separated from the rest. It has, like you can see here, we have this border or something. Let's play around with some of the other options. So if I launch again, you'll see that there's this animation where the action sheet sort of pops up from the bottom. If I tap in the background, it will close, And actually, if you check out in the console here, so if we launch the action sheet, and if I tap the background, you'll see it will even run the code, the handler code for closing the function. So let's go back to the code. Okay, so if we go back to here, we have backdropDismiss. BackdropDismiss is true. So that means that when we click in the backdrop, it performs the same function as like clicking on the button that has the role of cancel, right? So this actually runs our handler for the close button, right? So that's how handy backdropDismiss is. If we change this to false and we save back in the browser, when we launch this and we click in the background, nothing happens, right? Only then when we click on cancel do we run all that code for canceling. If we change animated to false, then obviously our action sheet no longer has any animation. It just sort of disappears, reappears, disappears, reappears. Very vanilla. I actually prefer it when it has the animation. So I'm gonna change this back to true and save. And then we have this mode. So right now in my browser, I am running it on an emulated iPhone 678 browser. But so that means that the action sheet has iOS styles. But I can change that to MD, which stands for Material Design, which is the Android styles. So when we go back, you'll notice we're still on the iOS device. And if you click on Action Sheet, now we have Android styles. Okay, so the final thing that I'm going to show you are the so-called lifecycle methods for Action Sheet. So if you know about lifecycle methods in Ionic in general, you'll know that you can run certain pieces of code based on whether the application is about to open or etc., different instances. So actually with our action sheet, we can run certain pieces of code, any arbitrary code actually, when our action sheet is about to close and after our action sheet has closed. So we can do that with the following methods. Okay, so this is basically how you use the lifecycle methods for Action Sheet. So the first method is onWillDismiss, and this code that you run onWillDismiss runs right before the action sheet closes. So if you want to perform some programmatic actions before you close your action sheet, you will wrap whatever code that is. Here I'm just simply logging to the console, but you can put any arbitrary code in here and it will run just before the action sheet closes. So at this point, the action sheet will still be open, and then this is the code that's going to be executed right when it's about to close. And then onDidDismiss, this is code that is run immediately after the action sheet has closed. So this is before the action sheet closes, this is after it has closed. So in this instance, we're simply logging to the console, and if we've got it correct, this should run first, that it's about to close, and then lastly, that it's already closed, that code runs. So let's press Control S on Windows to save. If you're on a Mac, you can press Command and S, and let's head back to the browser. So in the browser, we can click on the action sheet. Our action sheet has been launched. We can click in the background. Okay, we removed background dismiss, so that won't work. If we click cancel, you can see that the close button has been clicked. That was our handler. The action sheet is about to close. That's line 55, which is in our onWillDismiss method. And then finally, we have the action sheet has already closed. That's on line 59, which is in our onDidDismiss code. So first, the close handler is run, and then onWillDismiss, and then onDidDismiss. So lines 41, 55, and 59. If we check in the code, that's exactly it. We see here the cancel handler on line 41 is where the code is, and on line 55, which is the code in onWillDismiss, and on line 59, which is the code on onDidDismiss. So that's it for making use of Ion Action Sheet in your Ionic Angular applications. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please click like, hit the subscribe button, and make sure to click the bell icon so that you can get notified of new videos. If you'd like to support this channel to create more content, you can become a patron at patreon.com/codeswag, and for as little as $1 a month, you can make more videos happen. Also, you can support us by heading over to our online shop, codeswag.co.uk, where you can get yourself awesome merch and tech gadgets. So that will also help to support this channel to create more great content. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.